Started. I'd like to call the May 21st, 2020 second virtual meeting in North Augusta Planning Commission history to order. We'll start with a roll call. To keep it in order, what I'll do is I'll call the commissioner's name, and then if you would please respond by your first and last name. So I'll say Commissioner Key, and then of course he would say Tim Key. So that way we can stay in order, since I think Larry may be called in and he won't be able to see. So Commissioner Key.
Timothy Key, present.
Commissioner Watts. Commissioner Crawford.
Christine Crawford, present.
Commissioner Clark.
Bob Clark, present.
Commissioner Carter.
Lynn Carter, present.
All right, Britton Williams. So once again, Commissioner Watts, are you on the phone? Okay, take that as a no right now. Okay, approval of minutes. Are there any deletions, additions, or corrections? All right, if not, then they are approved as distributed. Ms. Hodges, do we have any changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Why don't we do this at this point? If everybody would mute their mic, and that way it might help with the background. Before I jump into the applicant, if y'all remember last year, we rewrote and updated our rules of procedures. And I should have done this in our January meeting, and as we started the new year, but I didn't. So I think it's always a good idea to remind us of certain rules from time to time. So just as a reminder, on page 6 of our rules under ex parte communication, there are 3 items. 1, except at a public meeting, no planning commissioner should discuss with any citizen any matter which will be coming to the planning commission for action. Number 2, if a planning commissioner receives such communication, the commissioner should immediately inform the citizens that he or she should not discuss the pending matter and terminate the conversation. And 3, if a planning commissioner has received ex parte information, the commissioner may continue to participate in consideration of the matter. However, the commissioner should disclose the extent, nature, and content of the ex parte communication to the commission at the hearing or meeting and affirm his or her objectivity in the matter. All right, so with that, we'll move forward. Item 5, application RZM 20-001, Capers Lake Overlook Rezone. A request by Metro Home Sites, LLC to rezone 88.2 acres located on Capers Drive in Gregory Lake Road, TPN 106-00-00-022 from R14 large lot single family residential to R7 small lot single family residential. This will be a recommendation to the city council tonight. So with that,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Mr. Bob Clark. You just covered what I was going to do. Carolyn Backett called me this afternoon. She's one of the owners, and I've reminded her that I could not discuss this matter with her at all, and she agreed, and that was the end of the conversation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Information.
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, Ms. Hodges, anything that we need to know about this that you'd like to share?
Oh, I don't have a lot to add. I'll let the staff report kind of speak for itself. The applicant is asking to change from R14 large lot single family residential that it was zoned when it was annexed into the city. And that annexation was not one that was reviewed by the planning commission, because the determination was made that it did not need to be reviewed by the planning commission. And we can go into more detail about that if you have more questions about that. But they're requesting to move to R7 small lot single family residential zoning. And as you stated, it's 88.2 acres. We do have several citizen comments that have been submitted as well. And I would like to read those to you when we get to that point.
Okay, good enough. Are there any questions from commissioners for Mrs. Hodges? Okay, so at this point, I would like to ask the applicant if they would come on, and if you would please state your name and address for our record, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Philip Green, address 1233 Augusta West Parkway. This rezoning request for your consideration and recommendation to the city. As Mrs. Hodges said, this is approximately 88 acres of property, which is off of Capers Drive, around Gregory Lake. And as you can see in the packet with the plat, the lake itself takes up a good portion of the property. And in looking at this piece of property with an R14 zoning, was not really viable as far as being able to get any number of lots on there. So we're requesting to go to an R7, a small lot. The plan here is to do something more along the lines of a sort of cluster the development in areas to avoid the environmentally sensitive areas, drainage ways, the lake itself, and try to utilize the lake as an amenity. Having the property around the lake owned by the homeowners association for the benefit of all the residents in this development. We believe that the R7 again will give the developer the flexibility that he needs to put lots on the ground that will again protect the environment as best as possible, and also provide a lots that will benefit the city and be a viable project. We believe this is the highest and best use for this property. Again, having looked through the staff comments, I did see where stormwater had some concerns over the topography and the environmental drainage ways and other assets on the property that we will work hard to protect. That's pretty much all I've got. I don't know. Mark Gillum with Keystone is also on. I don't know if he wants to add anything else, or if not, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I really don't have much to add. You know, if you look at the property, only a small portion is capable of being developed because of the lake, the Capers Lake. So a large portion of it will not have any development on it.
Okay. All right. At this point, what we'll do is open it up for commissioners to ask any questions for either Mark or Philip. And I'll just start. Commissioner Key, do you have anything at this point? Any questions you'd like to ask?
Not at this point.
Okay. I don't know if Commissioner Watts did come on or not. I don't think so. Commissioner Crawford?
So I guess approximately how many lots do you envision having if you're granted the change, and how many would it have been if you were not? So how many could you have put on the property without the change?
I haven't actually done a hard layout on with the R14 zoning. We've looked at several different areas with the R7, and honestly, I did not bring the actual number of lots with me. Mark, I don't know if you might remember what that number was, but again, we've looked at several different scenarios. Obviously, with the team, given the topography and the amount of land that was there, it just really wasn't worth even going to layout to determine the density. And again, the R7 would give us the flexibility for different size lots, and sort of cluster this to stay away from the environmental areas.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Crawford, for him right now?
No.
How about Commissioner Clark?
No questions at this point.
All right, Commissioner Carter.
Just one thing I would add is this strictly a townhouse development, or are you looking at doing some sort of mixed use with townhouses and small lot, single family? And the second question would be, it kind of relates to the other questions. How many acres of that 88 is actually usable? If that's even something you've determined yet, and you might have determined that yet. So is it strictly townhouses, or will you do some sort of mix? And the second question is, how many of the 88 acres are actually usable for doing either or either and or both?
Philip, you want me to answer? You want to answer?
Either way, I haven't specifically looked at the actual acreage. Just looking at the property, I wouldn't imagine we'd have more than about 30 that was usable.
Yeah.
And again, we have looked at townhomes as a possibility. Again, the R7 would give us the flexibility, and Mark may be able to speak more to this, to put perhaps a mixture of lot sizes in there. I don't know that Mark is exactly settled on what kind of mix or mixed use he might want to have in there.
Yeah, we haven't even done much engineering on this at all to see exactly what we're looking at, and it could be all townhomes, it could be a mixed, it could be all detached. We just have to, we'll unpack it a lot more once we get into the engineering of it and seeing what we have to do to make this a viable project.
That's all I have.
Okay, I've got a couple. I'm just curious, this small piece south of Capers, what exactly are you seeing? What would that be used for? Is that just extra?
Well, we were thinking the city might want that.
There you go. What is that green?
I'm just talking anyway. All right, so nothing as far as this development right now.
That's correct. Nothing is right now.
So, with R14, you're looking at possibly, 308 units. Granted, Philip explained that not all the acreage is available. It would be accessible for that. And with R7, you got that capability, like 38% more lots, what R7 opens up for you. What about will the entrance be Capers Drive?
That's the way I've looked at it now is Capers Drive as the entrance.
It
I have
would
an
be.
existing connection to Gregory Lake Road, which would be challenging to add another one, I believe.
Right.
There you go.
Has. So yes, the intent right now is to use Capers Drive, improve it to a roadway to the city standards, and then move on into the development.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no other questions at this time, we'll come back, of course, for everybody. If there are no other questions at this time from commissioners for the applicant.
Chair?
I'll ask you, Ms. Hodges, if there are any public, you mentioned there's some public comments.
There are some public comments. I'd also like to acknowledge that Larry Watts has joined us.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Brenton?
We can, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, I tried to do the phone and it would not go through. I could hear y'all talking, but you could not hear me.
All right. So before we open it up for the public comment information from Ms. Hodges, do you have any questions you would like to ask the applicants?
I think that Ms. Crawford asked a question about how many units, and I don't know that the applicant answered in a quantitative number on that. But other than that, that was one of my questions. can you tell me whether there was a number given?
I believe Philip said they had not gotten that hard number yet. Is that correct, Philip?
That's correct. As much as we're still trying to determine the best use and the best lot sizes, and we would be again clustering these whatever development is in there to avoid the drainage ways, waterways, and the lake. So we don't have an exact number yet, but I think as noted in the report, a maximum density as allowed by the R7 across this acres. There's just not enough property to do that.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Watts, is any other questions at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, so at this point, Ms. Hodges, if you would like to, I'll open the public part of the meeting, and I believe you have received some public comments and allow you to read those for us.
I have. So I actually received one more technically after the deadline, but I'll go ahead with your permission, go ahead and read that to you. So the first set of comments is from Kevin Heckendorn. And he writes, in reference to the rezoning meeting this evening, I doubt anyone's comments will matter, but one must try. The developers knew the zoning when they purchased the land, so if they did not want R14 large lot property, why did they purchase? It's not like this was hidden from them. We are talking about 88 acres here being accessed from a blind corner when traveling east on Gregory Lake Road. People like myself that have lived in this neighborhood for many years decided to do so because of the large lots already in the neighborhood and the zoning restrictions that would preserve that as development progressed. That understanding was already violated with Gregory Landing, but it is a smaller community and most of us have welcomed new neighbors, but 88 acres is another story. At the same time as Gregory Landing was happening, we have had to endure the Bergen West expansion with its relentless sounds of destruction as every tree, every bush, and every blade of grass was purged from the landscape. Heavy equipment sounding like they were coming through the trees and into your backyard, cutting, grinding, bulldozing, and grading for 9 or 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for months on end. And during a pandemic when anxieties are already running high, when do we get a break? When does quality of life supersede money? When do our concerns matter? Thank you, Kevin Heckendorn. The second is a voicemail we received from Mr. Porter Vaughn on May 12th. Mr. Vaughn stated that he saw the public zoning notification for Gregory Lake Road about rezoning a large lot family residence to small lots. He said he's totally against it, stating we have too much of this going on in this vicinity, and he lives in country subdivision. He shared his contact phone number, and I'll leave that off. We can put it as part of the record later if it's determined we can share that. Mr. Vaughn stated he thinks it's a disgrace that both the properties on frontage road from Highway 25 on the east side of NHC has been totally cleared and scraped, devoid of all vegetation. And the property immediately west past the other subdivision between Coventry and the frontage road has been scraped and cleared. It's red clay. It's hard as a brick when it's dry, and if we get any rain, it'll be a mud hole. He said he disagrees with the practices North Augusta is allowing to happen, and this is not what he came here for. Mr. Vaughn stated he is against the project being rezoned on Gregory Lake Road to smaller lots. He asked to please vote no. He is against the rezoning and wants more green space maintained. Does not want us to become Washington Road or Columbia County. Likes for trees to be maintained on his property. Thinks the city of North Augusta is trying to increase the tax base. Does not want to be incorporated into the city or have to pay our taxes or be surrounded by the trap of progress. North Augusta is a peaceful bedroom community and does not believe that renters care about property. And there's 2 more. And this one is from someone submitted it through our website, Thomas and Linda Momeyer. We received the rezoning notification for the above mentioned property. We live on Hickory Hill Drive, which is adjacent to the proposed rezoning parcel. We think that rezoning from large lot single family to small lot single family will have a detrimental effect on our property and its value. We urge the commission to deny this request. And the last one is from Miss Sheila Sanborn. Miss Sanborn, that's from May 21st. Ms. Sanborn stated she wanted to express her thoughts on the Gregory Lake Road subdivision, and she is against it. She said the road cannot handle another subdivision because it is dangerous now. Ms. Sanborn stated it's a safety issue and feels the schools in the area cannot handle it. Ms. Sanborn said she lives in the area and these are her concerns. She stated she votes no. And she shared her contact phone number. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Would the applicant care to have any response to any of those comments at this time?
Yes, just a couple of things.
Mark, would you
One
mind?
is,
Mark, would you mind stating your first and last name and your address for the record? I apologize. I meant to ask you before. I'm sorry.
yeah, Mark Gillum, and I'm the manager of Metro Home Sites. And my address is 924 Stevens Creek Road, Augusta, Georgia.
Thank you, Mark.
And in terms of the clearing of trees and so forth, as you guys know, we have to put a lot of trees back when we start building homes, when we clear trees. So, and North Augusta enforces that very strictly. And the stormwater control department in North Augusta is very strict too. So they don't like mud holes. We don't like mud holes. We don't like cutting down trees. Okay. But sometimes it's necessary to develop a piece of property. But when we get done and get the homes put in there, there's lots of trees. I know there's one in Gregory Landing that Keystone had to put about 15 trees on. So a lot of, and usually the trees we put back in are sometimes are nicer trees than what was there and what was removed. And in terms of one of the comments was knowing that it was zoned this way, why did we purchase it? Well, we have not purchased this property, and as typical in developments, you put these under option, subject to getting the zoning you need to be able to economically be able to develop and build. So yes, we did know the zoning, and so we made that a part of the deal to purchase this property.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Sorry. At this point, we'll go through with the commissioners, and I'll start again. Commissioner Key, do you have any follow-up questions for the applicant or any comments you would want to make at all at this point?
Yes. This question is directly for Mark. When you looked at this property and you have an option on it, you had to do some preliminary figures. And I'm curious as to what are those preliminary figures as to what you think you might be able to get as far as number of lots, and what's your mind's eye as to what you plan to do? And does this take into consideration any type of mass grading where you've got to come back in and plant the trees? Looking at the topography, it is steep in a lot of areas, so I know you're going to be challenged with getting the road in there. So I need to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's a good question, Tim. Yes, it's going to involve mass grading. I mean, that's pretty much any development you do these days has to have mass grading unless you're on a flat piece of property with no trees. So yes, we'll have mass grading. We'll be replanting trees. We will protect the areas next to the lake. And one of the things that we want to do is make the lake, the property adjoining the lake, a part of the homeowners association, so that every resident of that neighborhood can then benefit and enjoy that water feature. I think we can provide housing here at a much less price than what you have at, for instance, Hammond's Ferry. And while that's an extremely nice project down there, it is very, very expensive, and there's just not many North Augustans, I think, who can really afford to live or willing to pay, $500,000, $1 million for a home to be close to water. But this is something where we would like to be in the 200 plus, $200,000 to $300,000 price range on homes. So We have looked at it. We've run numbers and we've looked at it, and I don't think we can get really more than, we might be able to get 2 to 2.5 homes per acre, but that's going to be really stretching it. It's probably as few as, 0.7 homes per acre, but I think we'll be somewhere in between those numbers. Okay.
And what's the math on that as far as the number of lots?
I would say anywhere
80
between
80 acres, giving up about a quarter of that in infrastructure. So you're down to 60 acres.
We don't have 60 acres because of the lake, but we're probably looking at anywhere from 60 or 70 to 180 lots. Just depends on the engineering and what we're capable of doing. Something like that. We don't have any hard numbers. This is what we're going to do. We've looked at it with large lots. We've looked at it with medium-sized lots. We've looked at it, but we don't have anything that nothing's been engineered, and it's just been kind of quick and dirty.
And this question is from Ms. Hodges. In the event if the zoning was approved to be much smaller lots, what would be the steps in regards to the grading and getting the preliminary plat approval to go forward? Can you kind of walk me through that?
Sure. So depending on actually it doesn't really matter what zoning it has,
Right.
process. So it would come in and be a preliminary plat, and we would do all the same environmental and engineering and planning related reviews that we do for any subdivision. I'm assuming it will be over 5 lots, so it would come back to the planning commission for final approvals.
Okay. And looking at the from a layperson standpoint and trying to measure the steepness of these the grade and as to what we have as far as a guideline for mass grading, how does this fit? Does that make sense, the question?
Well, we don't have any particular requirements for or against mass grading. Most of y'all recall several years ago, none of that went forward. We do have some requirements as to steep slopes and stabilizing steep slopes, and that's all. Most of that's handled by our engineering and stormwater department. There's also some requirements about drainage ways and keeping those buffered as much as possible and not disturbing them. But there's some crossings that are allowed and some other stuff that are regulated by stormwater in the state.
And I was reading about 2 of the basins had tested well with the water. How the basins that it will be fed by this area, how is that potentially affected?
Potentially, or theoretically, all of the stormwater generated by this site should be captured on the site, so there should be no impact.
And once we got a certain amount of houses in the area, a deceleration lane, would that be required if you say it's 80 homes, because that is a sloping and dangerous road? How would that be handled?
So that would be subject to a traffic impact analysis. And that's not something that has been completed by the developer at this time. But we would look at that closely and coordinate with SCDOT about what would be needed.
Okay. I'm good at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Key. Good questions. Okay, who is next? Commissioner Watts, any questions for you, sir?
Well, I have some comments. I don't know whether I have any questions.
All right, well, you want to save the comments for when we, well, go ahead, make the comments.
Are we going to come back for comments?
Well, we are going to discuss as commissioners. Yes, sir.
Before we make a proposal for a
we
approval?
can. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm just talking to them.
Getting questions for them, okay.
I'm just
Okay, how about Commissioner Crawford?
No other questions, thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
No question, just one reminder, what we're here tonight for is decide zoning, and we don't have any input on what's gonna be built there other than what would be allowed. But I know why we're trying, the questions are all coming because we know what they're gonna do with it. But all we're at tonight is that we recommend the city council, yes or no, to rezone it. And it's been partially covered. Nobody will ever have to try to convince the planning commission that cutting trees is a bad idea. But as you all know, city council has consistently chosen not to have such an ordinance. It's perfectly legal. I'm just saying I have no questions for them or Libby at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carter?
Well said, Mr. Clark. Appreciate that comment about the masquerading. I was headed that direction as well, but no question. Commissioner Key covered most of my questions very well. He did a very thorough job, so I'm good.
Okay. One question I had, Ms. Hodges. Under staff report, the city stormwater management department is pretty strong statements as far as based on code, the difficulty they see in meeting these challenges. So if that did proceed and there would be issues with them meeting code there, what would be the next step for them? Would something come back to us for any types of variances of the codes or the environmental side, or the city would just work with Mark on that themselves?
Generally, in this case, the rules are kind of the rules. Most of our stormwater rules are set by the state. We're just a designated reviewer. So there would be very few rules that would actually come back to us for any kind of waiver or variance or anything related to that.
Okay.
It would come back to the planning commission for approval of their preliminary plat.
Yeah.
Should they get that far, assuming that they will get that far.
Sure.
It would be reviewed under the same criteria that pretty much every other subdivision is reviewed by.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. All right, this time, commissioners, if we'd like to, I'm going to close the public part of the meeting. And at this time, commissioners, if we'd like to have comments between ourselves, this would be a good time to do that. So I won't call you by name. I'll just allow you to open up if you have any comments. I think Commissioner Watts had some.
I do have some, Chairman Williams. There's several things when I was looking through the planning commission considerations and whatnot. I read through and just tried to pick out the ones where I felt like there might be an incompatibility or inconsistency with what the zoning with what the considerations should be. And one of the was the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area. And I don't think that if you take the surrounding area as it exists now, you couldn't say that R7 would be compatible with the homes that are presently in that area. And I think we need to look at this thing as a kind of a holistic view as to why this piece of property is at this point in time being requested to be rezoned R7, or why it's even being developed right now. And that brings me to the point that was further in the report that the staff made, in that one of the things in the comprehensive plan was to use utilities to try to control the outreach of the city. And we all know on the planning commission that that projects that are residential in nature and are out of town are not really money makers. The city makes money on businesses downtown, things that are close in, and when we reach further and further out, our return is increasingly small. And not so much for today, for us, it's small for our children and our children's children, because that's when the really the expense is going to come back in. And so we have to ask ourselves, why is this property being developed now? And the reason is we brought it into the city limits. If this property had not been brought into the city limits, it would never, Mark Gillum would have no interest in it at all, because the property out in this area won't perk. So that means you can't get a septic tank approval. You have to have a large piece of property to find an area where you can put your septic tank and your drain lines. So the only reason this property is being developed is because we brought it into the city. So when we bring it into the city, we've neglected that part of the comprehensive plan, that we're going to use our utilities to control our growth. So if what we want to do is expand on out of the city, then okay, then that's what we intend to do. But I don't think that from a standpoint of a monetary standpoint for the city's good is necessarily a good thing for us to do. I think it's a mistake. Now, the only clean water that we've got in any of those streams coming into the Savannah River in the city is Fox Creek Basin. And that's because it hasn't been developed. It's, you got 1,000 acres of woodlands out here. So the streams are fairly pristine. And I don't know how we could think that if we mass graded on a piece of property that's got a 40-foot drop going straight to a lake, that we're going to be able to maintain a pristine state of water going into these lakes. And I think that later on, years and years down the road, that it's going to come back to bite us. And so I feel like that the rezoning of this piece of property to an R7, it's going to be detrimental enough at an R14. Or R7, I just think we're being negligent if we advise city council to accept this.
Okay, thank you. Who else?
Mr. Chairman, I know we're in not an executive committee, but we're debating amongst the commissioners. Mark, do you want to take a bat at what he's just, if it's in order? You've got an argument that's pretty steep. What say you?
Well, the reason why this property is being developed is because we think that the market demand and the economics will justify us developing at this time. It's not necessarily because it's in the city of North Augusta. It's because what we're asking to do, we can get into the sewer, and that makes you not have to have a septic tank. This property really doesn't work for any septic. You can't grade septic, and large lots are very expensive to produce. These, even small lots, the lots that we developed next door in Gregory Landing, the utilities cost on putting those lots in are probably, this is not land costs, it's not engineering costs, it's not government cost or financing costs. Just putting the streets and drains in is about $30,000 a lot. Okay, it's very expensive. It's expensive because we're cutting down trees. That's expensive. We're moving dirt. That's expensive, and you have to get some density to be able to be able to economically do this. And if you don't get some density, you end up with property that is so expensive. If you stay at R14, it makes it for us just not feasible economically. And if anybody develops it, then you're looking at, I mean, you might want $500,000, $1 million homes. That sounds good, but that serves, a dozen North Augustans, and we can serve 100, 150 or whatever North Augustans with a property that has waterfront frontage.
Thank you for that response. Any other commissioners' comments?
Bob Clark. You know, we need to remind ourselves that whether they build a smaller number of large lots or a large number of small lots, the same trees are going down. The same slope's going to be disturbed. So that's not going to change any of that part. It's just whether it's appropriate for that neighborhood. And we keep being told over and over again that the demand in this market now is for smaller houses, not big lots anymore, that the younger people don't want them. So I just say, but we're not, if this stays R14 and they develop it, it's not going to change the clear cutting at all. I don't think. That's it.
Thank you. Who else?
So,
Commissioner Crawford, I think I heard you.
no, and so just I am a fan of affordable housing, but I'm not sure that you said 2 to 3, so I'm erring on the side of saying 300,000 waterfront would be in the realm of affordable housing. And so that discussion and justification is something that kind of concerns me. And would have preferred to have had some information about definitively, could have done 100. So it's a difference between 100 versus 400. And that's what we're thinking. And so that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Carter?
I'm good right now. I'm good.
I want to say something as well, just for the good of the order. As far as conversation, in reading this probably about an hour ago, boning up and trying to kind of figure out what's going on. Affordable housing is a necessary thing, and owners' rights as to what they want to do with the property, even though it's not owned at this moment by the developer, has merit as to the property being developed. So I have mixed emotions that does this property stay as it is, and we consider it as being pristine property, not to ever be developed. Because I used to ride my bike in that area, and it seemed like it hadn't changed in about 45 to 50 years almost. And so are we, and this is something for the commissioners, are we considering this as being a jewel in North Augusta's crown, and it should be left as is? Or is it time to look at it from a standpoint that with technology and grading, that it could be made in something? Where I'm disappointed in trying to make a decision is I'm very much visual. I want to know where we're going. I want to know what things look like, and to kind of shoot it in the dark and say, well, yeah, we're gonna make small lots. And me being a visual person, it does not bode well for me having confidence as to how is it going to fit in as far as the hills and everything. So I've got mixed emotions, and I just want to put that out to the commissioners as to where I'm at.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. I've struggled with this a little bit. One of my concerns was just the fact that, we had nothing to do with the annexation. City Council did that. And as Commissioner Clark mentioned, we're here to go decide R4 from R14 to R7. The density issue was a concern for me because of how many lots you can get on that R7. But I think the applicant has satisfied me a little bit with the fact that a lot of those acres, yes, mass grading is a city decision. We have nothing to do with that. We can't fight that. That's a given, unfortunately, at this point. But the fact that 60 to 80 lots, 30 acres being used of that land, I do think that's positive. That it makes me feel a little bit better. But I keep going back to the city's stormwater management, the environmental side. And the reality is it might be a moot point because if they aren't able to make it happen environmentally, it really doesn't matter. But I'm somewhat like you, Tim, as far as back and forth with it. The environmental side concerns me. But again, the bottom line is they've got to follow code, and and code may state that it doesn't work for them. So those are my initial thoughts. Anybody else?
I'd like to make a couple of comments in reference to what Bob,
Mr. Watts.
Commissioner Clark said, and that it really doesn't make any difference whether it's R7 or R14. If they're going to mass grade it, they're going to mass grade it, and it's going to be the same problem regardless of the size of the lot.
Yep.
You know, what I would like to see is I'd like to have seen something come in where they were using a more of a conservation type development where there would be only a small amount of mass grading. There would be only pockets that they were going to put townhouses, and the majority of this land would have been left wooded. And for some reason, all of our developers in this area right now, the only thing they understand is mass grading. And I don't know whether it's their crews can't build on anything but slab, or I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm really not sure. But yes, I do agree with Bob. It doesn't matter whether it's R7 or R14. But like Tim, I don't like the fact that we're voting on something and we're voting R7 and we don't really know what we're going to get. And when it comes back to us, it's going to be more and more difficult for us to say no when it comes back and we don't like what it looks like. So I just feel like that this is a time where I have to vote on the negative for this project.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have one, Chairman Williams. Anytime you bring up the word mass grading, it just makes me cringe. You know, but what has happened is we have allowed ourselves, you know, through our own legislation to be backed into this corner.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how we can say you can do it and he can't do it, or she can do it and he can't do it. I think it's a given that it's going to be done because it's being done everywhere. And so until we are able to put some sort of teeth back into that process, I'm not sure where we go. I have wrestled with this as well. Gregory Lake is becoming more hazardous every day because of the number of traffic, much traffic out there. But then I go back to the fact, well, it's this person's land. He should be able to do with it what he wants to. So, you know, we talked about that last month in the meeting, you know, where one time we were keeping this one person from doing something, but yet at the same time, we were allowing the other ones to do it. So we get in this mix back and forth. I know I'm probably rambling now, but it's tough to consider, particularly when everything around this project is not zoned in that same zoning. And then what really scares me is when I looked at page 7, and I've read it 3 or 4 times, and it says, you know, really based on the number of acres, I know it's only a part of it can be used, but if you look at page 7 in that second paragraph where it says 616 lots. Now I know that can't happen because I know we don't have about 38, 88 guys, so don't run away with me, Mark. But I mean, you know, it's just that terrifies me. It really does. So, but I'm steady wrestling with this thing as well, and I just I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm not sure we can penalize the developer for wanting to do with it what he wants to, but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen a complete plan as well before we took this chance. So.
Well, those are great comments, Commissioner Carter. Let me throw something out. Ms. Hodges can talk about this. You know, in y'all's staff report, you talked about, of course, R14, what it is currently, and R7 is what Mark is requesting. Talk to us about R10. Is that something, Mark, that, do y'all look into that at all? I can't hear you.
I think Tim.
I'm gonna let Philip help me. R10 allows us to do what size are those?
That's minimum 10,000 square foot, maximum 4.5 dwelling units per acre. So you're looking at possible density max of 396. So, that was in the staff report and really haven't talked about it. And I just didn't know if we needed to have that for a conversation since we're talking about all this.
Yeah, we would just have to look at that to see if that was feasible, economically feasible. It's a possibility. But if we get it zoned, if we get it zoned R7, that's still a possibility to do that density or some combination thereof.
Okay.
And that's sort of what Mark and I had talked about. The R7 zoning, he could still go in there and put in the 10,000 square foot lots, depending on what layout we end up with. But again, given the environmental challenges and the slopes on that property, to get any kind of density on there, I feel like you're going to have a portion that is going to utilize the R7 zoning. Because there's going to be so much land that is unusable.
Okay.
Libby, this is a question. Does R10 take the townhouses out?
Yes, townhouses are not allowed in R10.
I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that if they were going to go that direction. So.
Okay. Any other conversations from commissioners? Any other thoughts? Because y'all have all made very good ones. Okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion. And again, the motion, realize that we're voting for a recommendation to city council. So at this point, I would ask anybody would like to make a motion.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did most of the motions last month. It's time for someone else to step up. And remember, the motion, we want it in the affirmative. That doesn't mean you're going to vote that way. It's just how we need to have the emotion. And then, so.
Discussion.
Well, we're going to have I was going to have a motion and a second, then have the discussion. But yes, we need a motion to have that discussion. So we need a first and a second, and then we can have final discussion before we vote.
Who's your parliamentarian?
Commissioner Crawford is our expert on wording motions.
She does do it well, yes. Okay. Okay. All right. I make a motion that application RZ M20-001 Capers Lake Overlook zoning, a request by Metro Home Sites to zone 88 acres located on Capers Drive and Gregory Lake, that it is that we approve the zoning recommendation from R14 to R7. That is motion by Commissioner Williams. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Clark.
Okay. Commissioner Clark. Okay. Final discussion. Thoughts?
I have most difficulties in making decisions when I have lack of information. And I am I have a quandary and I'm sitting on my hands I just don't have enough information. I would have hoped for from engineering and Mark that I had a peek inside of your head as to what your overall plans were, before we disturb what is already in place. And that's my quandary. And I'm all for development. I do not particularly like mass grading, but there's a compromise into what's economically feasible for a developer to come in and build homes. So that puts me in a precarious position as to how do I vote. So that's my discussion.
I understand. Anybody else?
I'd make one more comment that, can you hear me?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, on page 8 of 10 on our on the staff report, it talks about the staff foresees challenges in meeting the following requirements in developmental code. And it says Article 6.1.3.2 is to preserve the natural features of the site and avoid areas of environmental sensitivity, minimize negative impacts upon or unnecessary alteration of natural features. Article 6.1.3.3 minimizes disturbance of steep slopes when possible. Article 15.1.3.2 natural watercourse easements. And it goes on natural street adjoining or adjacent to natural watercourses, riparian buffers. And it says the property is considered to be environmentally sensitive area. And, you know, if you read this, you realize that staff is saying as strongly as they can that they have some very, very strong concerns about the development of this property. And I just think that we need to be very sensitive to what we do today. And, you know, I've heard the argument that an owner has a right to do what he wants to do with his property, but that goes only so far. I don't think the owner has a right to to have a negative impact on the rest of the surrounding area or to the water that's going to Savannah River. You know, this is the water that everybody in the city drinks. So I think that there's a certain point. You know, it kind of reminds me of an old song back in the 60s, and it was about a young guy wanting to go look at a mountain, and the father tells him, well, son, I'm sorry, you're too late. Mr. Peabody coal train's done haul that away. And I'm thinking that, you know, we gotta think about what we're doing here. And are we letting Mr. Peabody's coal train haul it away? So I just would encourage everybody on the planning commission to think about what we're doing. That's
Good
all.
comment. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm torn. You know, the mass grading is going to happen regardless if they decide to do R14 or R7. The density is the issue initially, but that's been alleviated a little bit just with the 30 acres they're going to be using, even though they're going to mass grade, it's regardless. And I keep going back to the environmental like Commissioner Watts, but the reality is that's going to come forward at some point. So we're recommending to City Council, and if I'm right, Ms. Hodges, our recommendation, if we do make that recommendation to R7, it still has to go to City Council, and even if they approve it, it still has to go through approve a development code of the environmental and all of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the bottom line is, like Commissioner Clark says, we're saying, is R7 viable? But then everything code-wise, based on what the city does, they still got to abide by code and everything, correct? Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Whew. Any other discussion? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, then we're going to go in the same order. We have a motion to approve application RZM 20-001, Capers Lake Overlook rezoning, request of Metro Home Sites to rezone from R14 to R7. So we'll go down the order. Commissioner Key, a yes or a no?
I abstain.
All right. Let's see. Commissioner Watts.
No.
Okay. Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
No.
Oh, I jumped on Crawford. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner, Crawford. Sorry about that.
No.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm torn, but I keep going back to the environmental side, even though they've got to do it. I'm not excited about it either. I'm gonna say no. So we have 1 yes, 4 no, and 1 abstain. Is that correct, Ms. Hodges?
I only have 1 yes and 1 abstain.
Right. 1 yes, 1 abstain, and the rest are no's.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. All righty. So, Philip and Mark, we appreciate your time, and good luck with City Council. I think you'll probably get some positive response. Thank you for your time tonight.